You're listening to the Huddle Up Podcast with Chad Jensen and Zack Kelberman. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com and sound off. And now it's time to drop some knowledge.
Okay, and we are live. Welcome in, everybody, to a punctual and on-time Huddle Up Podcast, presented as always by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me as always, my partner in crime. You know him, you love him. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, there was a little piece of news that broke for the Broncos on Thursday, and we had to bid adieu to Mr. Billy Wynn, who was on his second go-round with the Broncos. And the Broncos also waived Horace Richardson. So for those who can remember, cornerback, kind of a journeyman, undrafted cornerback, landed with the Broncos from the Vikings, if I'm not mistaken, was his previous stop. And he got hurt in the preseason and ended up on injured reserve. He's gone, and Billy Wynn is gone, Zack.
Yeah, I mean, on its face, these aren't major moves. It's just kind of off-season procedural things, chopping down the 90-man roster. But when you look at it, they cut a cornerback and they cut a defensive lineman. And those are the two positions that they're going to fortify in the weeks ahead. And they've already done it with Boye, but they're going to bring back Derek Wolfe or Shelby Harris. They might add DJ Reader. They might bring in Amuka Mara at cornerback. So it may provide a little glean of insight as to where the Broncos are thinking right now in the immediate short-term future as how they want to construct the roster. Billy Wynn, when he was brought back, Chad, I questioned it from the beginning. I don't understand what the Broncos saw in him, what the Broncos saw in Corey Nelson and Dakota Watson to bring back these guys that Elway has shown an interest in. He didn't really serve much. He didn't really provide much on defense. So no big loss, but it just, to me, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but like it looks like Elway is focusing his efforts on defensive line and cornerback in the very near future.
That's basically what I'm saying too. This is kind of priming the roster, not to say that roster math makes all that much of a difference at this stage in the year, but kind of getting some roster clarity so that when free agency rolls around, you know, the team is able to move quicker, make better decisions. But Billy Wynn, I'm with you on that, because when the Broncos brought him back, it was really weird because his first year in Denver, 2016, he was actually really solid. The post Super Bowl 50 year, Trevor Siemian was the starter. They win 9 games, solid season, missed the playoffs barely. But then he gets hurt and misses all of 2017, and so he spends that year on IR. Then he spends all of 2018, Zack, out of football. And then a new coaching regime comes, Vance Joseph's gone, Vic Fangio comes in, Vic brings him back. Well, you know, Elway and Vic bring him back, and then he promptly gets hurt. So just kind of a weird, very unusual as far as the way Elway is usually reluctant to rekindle things with former players. You got to wonder what the rationale was there, other than I guess they were just worried about their depth.
Yeah, and maybe they were looking for more of a nose tackle or more, like you said, a depth move. But they had Purcell that came on. They had Draymond Jones who came on late in the season. So he was kind of rendered obsolete in a sense. Billy Wynn, the Zach Kerr types, these are Jags upon Jags upon Jags. The Broncos can easily replace them, and they will this offseason by bringing in, hopefully, DJ Reader to stack on top of Derek Wolfe among their free agent signings.
Guys, today is the Mile High Mailbag. We are your football priests, as you know. Each and every week, we're here to offer you the absolution and answers to your burning Broncos questions, and we're going to get to those tonight. It's no holds barred. We've blocked out a significant block of time, all for you guys. There's just one topic that Zack and I wanted to discuss before we dive in, and that has to do with Trent Williams. Now, before we do that, though, make sure you guys, a couple of quick matters of business, make sure you're following the show on Twitter. Easy to do. Open up the app at Huddle Up Pod. Click it, boom, bang, follow. You're up to date with everything that relates to this show in real time. And then the same goes for Mile High Huddle on Twitter, at Mile High Huddle, for breaking Broncos news in real time. Take care of those two things. And then when you get some time, head on over to huddleuppod.com, not to be confused, Zack, with huddleuppodcast.com right here on the screen. Huddleuppod.com. Get yourself one of these hats. Get yourself one of these shirts. There's some hoodies. There's all kinds of different stuff on there now, and we're going to be adding to that more and more as we go. But take a look at that when you get some time. You guys have been phenomenal in your support on the merch store so far. But I like to remind everybody, because this show is growing by leaps and bounds each and every episode, each and every week. It grows significantly on YouTube, especially Facebook, Periscope, and then, of course, our great listeners that listen after the fact on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, whatever. So it's a reminder, huddleuppod.com, organic, easy way to support the show.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
All right, Zach, Trent Williams, this is not a topic you and I are unfamiliar with. This was one that we hashed back and forth, for a good 6 weeks before the NFL trade deadline last fall. And of course, nothing came of it. But the team, Washington Redskins, gave him permission to seek a trade. Now, what does that mean? That means he can enlist his agent to actively seek out and talk to teams and get a deal put together, compensation for the Redskins, bring it back to the Redskins and say, this is what I want, will you accept, etc. So, Zach, my question to you is, the Broncos dragged their feet on this last year. Do you see that stance changing in 2020, especially considering Bulls kind of a little mini turnaround down the stretch?
Right. Yeah. This is something where I see Elway making a call to the Redskins and seeing what is it going to take to get Trent Williams to kind of do the due diligence that he would do. But when you just give Juwan James a massive contract, when you're still holding out hope for Garrett Bowles, when you haven't even exercised his 5th-year option yet, Chad, you're really banking on him taking a step forward. Year 2 under Mike Munchak. I don't foresee the Broncos giving up a draft pick, taking on a massive contract, taking on a disgruntled player who sat out the entire season last year because he was unhappy with the Redskins medical staff and the coaching staff. You don't want to bring those type of poisonous personalities into the locker room. Same reason you don't want Stephon Diggs in the locker room. Same reason you don't want Darius Slay in the locker room. You want it to be all one heartbeat. You want it to be all one goal. You want the team to be cohesive, and adding a guy like that, as good as he can be on the field, I just don't see Elway taking that leap when you have 2 blockers you already have set in stone. And, they have high hopes for both of them.
I don't disagree with you, except to point out as devil's advocate that even though he's 31 years old, we are talking about the almost nearly undisputed best left tackle in the game. Trent Williams is, he's a transcendent talent, and he is that quintessential set and forget left tackle. Now, leading up to the combine, Zach, basically the messaging and buzz we'd heard coming from Dove Valley, from people we talked to and other public reports, was that the Broncos hadn't quite made a decision, and they still haven't, on Garrett Bowles' 5th-year option. But the feeling was they were more encouraged on Bowles, and they felt like he took a shine to Mike Munchak last year, and they're optimistic to what the future holds. And then we get to the combine, and of course Elway goes out and says, yeah, we still don't know. We're going to wait till May or whatever before we decide on the 5th-year option. But the buzz that came out of the combine was the reverse. It was that the Broncos are in like some kind of near panic mode on left tackle, that they very much are looking at additional options there. We didn't know if that necessarily meant a starter to replace Bowles, or they're worried about their depth. It was unclear. But if you look at who they talked to, Zach, at the combine, it was a who's who of wide receivers and a who's who of offensive tackle, with a little bit of running back and a little bit of everything else mixed in. But those were the 2 main groups. So you have to wonder how big of an issue this is in the mind of Elway. If it were up to me, Zach, I'm going all in. I'm calling up and I'm saying, hey, I know he's in the last year of his contract. He's set to make, for what it's worth, in 2020, according to overthecap.com, Trent Williams is due a $12.5 million base salary. And I'm willing to pay that, A. B, as far as compensation to the Redskins, here's a 2nd-round pick. Because if you look at it like this, last thing, and then I'll serve it over to you. If the Denver Broncos used a 2nd-round pick on an offensive tackle, let's say they go wide receiver at pick 15, and in the 2nd round they get an offensive tackle, you're talking about the 4th, 5th, 6th, maybe best player at that position in the class. Yeah, young, upside, time to develop him and all that, opposed to or compared to the number 1 top left tackle in the league today. And so if I'm giving up a 2nd-round pick, and I know I got to create an extension here soon for Trent Williams, if I can get him for that, I'm doing it.
I think where we are in lockstep, Chad, is we agree the Broncos need offensive line help. They need depth at tackle. They need probably a starter at tackle, because one of Juwan James or Garrett Bowles is not going to hold up. It's just looking at it realistically, not optimistically. The thing is, though, are you giving up a 2nd-round pick and paying $12 million for a backup? I mean, he'd be sitting on the bench, because right now the Broncos have those tackles in place. I'd rather use a 2nd-round pick on a tackle. You're paying him peanuts. He can sit and learn on the bench. He can develop, and you still have that depth move if anything happens with Bowles or Juwan James. If we're talking about tackles that used to be good, I would go out and sign Jason Peters right now. He can take a 1-2 year deal, low guarantee money, a little over the veterans minimum. He's still capable, and he wouldn't mind, I think, being a backup or being a swing guy. Trent Williams, though, it's a lot of money, a high round draft pick for a guy who probably wouldn't start from day one. That's where it ends for me.
I mean, the thing is, too, that I'm a little bit loath to turn the page on Garrett Bowles, because I do think there is some evidence that he has begun to turn the corner and tap into that rare athleticism that he has for the position, showing a lot more of signs of discipline and getting in lockstep with Mike Munchak. However, am I willing to continue to pursue that line of thinking at the expense of Trent Williams? No, dude. If I can get Trent Williams and it's a second round pick, I'm going for it. However, here's the thing though, Zach. Realistically, is it going to happen? I think Broncos fans are a little bit more optimistic this time around, because even though the Broncos were involved in a trade at the deadline last year, of course, it was Denver sending a player as opposed to bringing in a player. They just got AJ Bouye 2 days ago. So I think there's a lot of fans wondering if this is a situation that you could see John Elway take some action on. What's your gut tell you?
I don't think it's going to be Trent Williams, but I think Elway will acquire another starting level tackle, whether that's a Jason Peters or whether that's somebody else. I just don't see where Trent Williams would start from day one, Chad. Are you taking Bowles, moving him to guard? Are you taking Juwan James, moving him to guard? You have your tackles set already. They have high hopes for Bowles. They're paying Juwan James a lot of money. You bring in Trent Williams for $12 million, get the second round pick. Is he going to start? Is he going to start?
Bowles would take just playing it out in terms of the conversation. Bowles takes a seat. Maybe you even make Bowles part of the trade if you can. If the Redskins want him as he's a starting caliber guy. Hopefully, he's matured and whatnot. But still, he's a former first round pick. Maybe you can parlay him. But even if you can't, Zach, and you can't include him in the trade, he's now your swing tackle. And Trent Williams, either way, if you were to acquire or sign Trent Williams, that's like saying Michael Jordan, he takes a seat as the sixth man. No, Trent Williams would be the starter. Juwan James, because of pay, starter, right tackle. And Garrett Bowles, that's the fallout. What do you do with Garrett Bowles? You're ending the first round pick experiment on Garrett Bowles, essentially, because you're admitting that it was a failure and that you need an upgrade at the starter level.
I don't see the Broncos admitting their failure with him. If you throw Bowles into that trade, Chad, you make it Bowles and a third round pick for Trent Williams, where do I sign for that? All day, every day. But if you have Bowles and Juwan James and Trent Williams, and you're giving up a second round pick, and you're taking out another $12 million when you have to replace McGovern, you have to replace Ronald Leary. I mean, you have other moves you have to make. And to bring in a guy who might not start from day one, I'd rather just sign a guy in the open market, maybe a Mike Remmers, maybe a Jason Peters, save the draft pick, save some money, and still get some depth for the offensive line behind Bowles and Juwan James. That's the way I would go with that.
I don't think the Broncos are going to do it. I don't think they're going to push, because I think some of what we were seeing and hearing at the Combine was smokescreen stuff on Bowles. I do think that you got to the core of it right there, Zach. They don't want to admit the egg on their face with regard to Bowles.
Not yet.
They're going to play it out. And even if that means not picking up his fifth-year option, they're going to play it out in his contract year, quietly move on to somebody else in 2021 if they don't pick up that fifth-year option, and just kind of hope everyone forgets that they swung and missed big time on Garrett Bowles in the first round. I hope I'm wrong, because I honestly wouldn't have a problem with the Broncos giving up a second-round pick to get Trent Williams, because it would come with some kind of a pre-negotiated framework for an extension. He's in a contract year now. The Redskins, they're tired of their drama with him, and I'd be lying to you if I told you I could remember the exact reason he was so disgruntled in Washington last year. I don't remember what the reason was, but either way, I just don't think it's going to happen. So let's. I think we share a brain there. We'll see how it shakes out. Elway's showing a penchant for being a little bit aggressive to open this free agent period. We'll see how it shakes out. Speaking of Mile High Mailbag, guys, let's grab Joshua Johnson, who's been waiting on Super Chat for a minute. He says, are we going to be able to move on from Flacco before the 18th, or are the medicals going to be an issue? That's a real question, Zach. I think that they will end up moving on from Joe Flacco before the 18th. But at this stage, it's just a matter of they want to avoid an injury settlement in doing so. But it might get to a point, Zach, where they're just like, look, we pay the settlement. We got to get him out of here. $13.6 million dead cap. We got to create clarity for Drew Lock, and let's go find a backup option. Trevor Judge is the only Mile High Huddle analyst at this point through the offseason that has kind of semi-advocated in any way, shape, or form for Joe Flacco to take a pay cut and remain on as the backup behind Drew Lock. I don't see that happening, nor do I think it should happen.
Can I just add one more little point on Trent Williams before I move on to Flacco?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, man.
No, that's all good. The thing about Williams is he sat out all last year, so there's no guarantee he's going to become back to prior form, being this stalwart left tackle. Also, he has an injury reputation, injury history, and how many times were the Broncos burned by injured tackles? It's happened almost every single season. It happened last year with Jawan James. I don't think Elway is going to go to that well for one more time for a $12 million player. Also, I saw a comment that said, I'd rather start Bowles over Trent Williams. No, you don't know me, obviously. If you think I start Bowles over, I would start my lamp over Garrett Bowles if I could do that. I just don't like the guy, but I just don't think Trent Williams is that realistic. Now, in terms of Joe Flacco, he will be cut. The only thing the Broncos cannot do is trade the guy. No one's going to want him even for a bag of Doritos. They're going to have to cut him, take the cap hit, take the money they save and move on and admit, they whiffed badly with that quarterback move.
But we're both confident, I think, that it's going to happen before the open to free agency. I think they're going to get some clarity there because there also is an incentive for the Broncos to get him out of there beyond just the football aspect. Financially, they can free up another $10 million on the salary cap by getting him off the books. Frankie has a interesting thing here. He says, hey guys, just an idea. You need emojis to put on, a Football Priest t-shirt. That would be bad A.
Yep.
An emoji. What kind of an emoji though?
I think like a caricature, which we've talked about before. So we definitely have that in the pipeline. We've been thinking about that.
Yes. And if you guys have any ideas, any of you are artists out there, hit us up.
Yep.
You know what to do. All right. Let's see what else is on everybody's mind here. A lot of course. Oh, James. James wants to know, of course you are, James. You're
yes,
a super chat superstar. You've been super consistent, my friend. Thank you for the donation. That means the world to us, my friend. That's awesome. You, James. Let's see what else we got here, guys. What's up to you, 707? And welcome to everyone that's been hanging out in the room. We've, I don't know if you've noticed the last couple of, all week, really. We've tried to be a lot more hardline punctual on our stream deadline, the time we set on the stream to go live. So it's good to see you guys hanging out in the room. Robert on YouTube, he wants to know, Zach, what round should the Broncos draft for an off-ball linebacker?
I would not take that position, knowing how Vic Fangio works and knowing the way the defensive coaching staff likes to, play their players and develop them. I wouldn't take an inside linebacker unless someone falls to me at that spot in this class before the third or fourth round. They have other fish to fry on offense and defense, and they need a tackle, they need a guard, they need a wide receiver, a running back. That's just on offense. So I wouldn't touch inside linebacker, Chad, until the middle rounds.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
I mean, there's just, once you get past Isaiah Simmons, who's, like a Swiss Army knife of front seven, back seven, you can play, you could play him at safety, you could play him at off ball. Once you get past him and McQueen, I'm not sure there is like a first round caliber, no question off ball linebacker. So I think what you'll see from the Broncos is they'll wait on that position and try and fill it in free agency, to be honest with you, and bring in somebody that is developmental that they can perhaps work behind, because they've got Todd Davis one more year locked in, whatever his salary is, $6 million plus Alexander Johnson. They can, they went a good stretch last year where that off-ball linebacker duo was good enough to get by. And, you want to see a little bit more athleticism than Todd Davis can bring to the table and AJ from a coverage perspective. But Zach, they can get by and live with what they have. And so I think that'll kind of govern their decision making. You're not going to see them go crazy trying to find an off-ball linebacker.
It's a good point because it's not like the Broncos need a starter right now. Like you just mentioned, Chad, they have two guys. They still have Todd Davis in the fold, and say what you want about him. I'm no fan of his, but he's a great 2-down run stuffing inside linebacker. Then you have AJ Johnson next to him. Ideally, you want that 3-down pass covering dynamo, but they're so hard to find. Though I do think with the way that this defense is structured, they can bring in a middle round prospect and make him into a starting caliber player. It was supposed to be Josie Jewell. That didn't really work out, but I think they'll find that guy, like Chad said, on the open market or in the middle rounds of next month's draft.
All right. I see some fat people taking exception. Where is it? John, dude, you're taking it a little too seriously, man. Relax, my dog. Chill out a little bit, buddy. It's all good. Life goes on. Flippant Booch. Zach wants to give up on Bowles after all these years just so a team can take him and take advantage of his development with the Broncos. It's
please be sarcastic.
Say, there's finally he's showing signs of turning the corner, and then you get rid of him. Like, what are you? But at this stage, was it enough? Was it authoritative enough? It's not like he sustained it from the drop for like his third year. Week 1 to week 17, he was just a shutdown left tackle. I mean, it was from the bye on, basically. And at this stage, even the Broncos, Zach, have to consider it as a likely outlier rather than what to expect from him moving forward. Even if they still remain encouraged, you just can't plan around that, dude.
Right. I mean, I wanted to give up on Bowles since the day they drafted him. I never even liked that pick, but I'm just talking realistically of what the Broncos are thinking. I think how they think with Bowles is he's entering his second full season under Mike Munchak. He's still under contract under his rookie deal. He has the physical traits there. He has it where he can put it together. It's just not been consistent. I don't have much hope. I think Chad is more optimistic when it comes to Garrett Bowles than I am, but I just think Elway wants to save and avoid as much egg on his face as he can do with another first-round pick. He doesn't want that blowing up in his face a year after Paxton Lynch did. He wants some sort of positivity from Garrett Bowles. He's going to try to milk that for all it's worth this coming year.
Stu is back in the house with authority. He jumps in on Super Chat.
You,
we love you, Stu. We missed you. I don't know where you've been the last couple of pods. Well, maybe just the last pod. But either way, it's good to have you back in the saddle, my friend. Definitely in the Hall of Fame. On the Mount Rushmore, Zach, of Super Chat superstars for the Huddle Up podcast is Stu McPeak. We love you, Doug.
His number's retired. Put it that way.
Retired indeed. Let's grab Mark, also a Super Chat superstar with a kick butt profile pic on YouTube, rocking that swag. We dig that, Mark. Jumps in with a $20 donation on Super Chat. Appreciate you, Mark. He says, "What's up, my guys? Who would you pick in the first round from your gut feeling?" Chad, being a Star Wars fan, the next installment in Star Wars is The Old Republic, and Keanu Reeves being linked to play Darth Revan. You guys rock. I've heard some of that, dude. Not to derail the pod too much on Star Wars. It sounds like, Mark, you're a little bit of a Star Wars guy too. But what are they calling it? The High Republic or something like that? That's the next phase. And, I'm a big-time Star Wars guy, but one for example that I differ with a guy even like Eric Trickle, who's also a big-time Star Wars nerd, is he, for the most part, has been totally down and stoked on everything Disney's done with the franchise since they took it over. And from Last Jedi on, I've been extremely turned off. So I'm skeptical of what they might be able to do with the new series. And Zach, I don't know if you watched the what is it? I just had a brain fart. What's it called? The Mandalorian, with Baby Yoda and whatnot on Disney Plus. But that's the only thing that's given me, Mark, any kind of optimism that they can turn the ship around. But gut feeling, Zach, first round pick. What's your answer for Mark?
Right now, my gut is Henry Ruggs is just a telegraph pick right now. If he's on the board, Chad, that really has to be the guy. I don't know if he will be. He might go in the top 8, the top 10, but to me, it has to be wide receiver more than likely. And that guy, the number one that fits the Broncos, what they're looking for, his talent ability, that's Henry Ruggs to me at 15.
That's the no-brainer, and that's what I heard from a lot of people I trust coming out of the Combine. Of course, Zach and I couldn't get there this year. We will be at the draft, and we are super stoked to meet you guys there, those of you who are going to be there or who live in Vegas. Anyway, that's a topic for another time. But the people we talked to coming out of the Combine, people that I trust, and some of this has been reported. I think Benjamin Albright telegraphed this on Twitter. The Broncos they actually covet Henry Ruggs. Like, it wouldn't be completely shocking to see them actually trade up if he gets within that, let's just say, back end of the top 10. It wouldn't surprise certain insiders to see the Broncos do it. So to answer the question, I'm with you on that. The most no-brainer is Henry Ruggs. That's the gut. But barring that, I'm going to say Tristan Wirfs remains up high on their list. And if he's there at 15, it's going to be hard for them to pass on him. Jeff Cohen jumps in on Super Chat. Appreciate you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
He says, I think Vaughn rather than DJ. I think Vaughn rather than DJ. What's he saying there?
Vaughn would rather DJ.
Oh, I think
we're about to spit some hot fire.
Would rather DJ. Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Maybe we throw Chad Locke and Zach on the mic and do a live flow session with Vaughn DJing at MHH headquarters. Heck yeah, dude. We'll invite him to the draft party, get him freaking rocking it in Vegas. No, but you're always better at that, dude. If the syntax isn't perfect for me and I'm trying to read the question, You're my go-to interpreter on those. You rock at it.
Yeah, context clues are where it's at, Chad. But yeah, I know put on, every word to that song. So me and Drew going back and forth on that, I'd love to have some fun, rapping and battling like that.
All right, let's see here. David brings something up that I've also been asked about by multiple fans and listeners of the show, reached out to me on DMs and whatnot, about Jason Peters. Problem is, Jason Peters is 38 years old, and eventually that cliff's going to come, and it doesn't seem he's quite yet careened off the cliff, Zach, but it's coming quick. It's coming quick.
But is 38-year-old Jason Peters falling off a cliff, is he worse than Garrett Bowles at his worst? That's my thing. Can he come in and replace Garrett Bowles at 38, 39, and even not in his prime anymore? I would still take Jason Peters and trust him a whole lot more on the blind side than Garrett Bowles most of the time.
Wow, Ed jumping in on Super Chat, flexing like a true superstar with a $75 donation. Dang, Edward.
Thank you, Edward.
We love you, bro. Especially after yesterday, dude. That generosity, that means the world to us. We got some swag coming your way. It's ordered up. It's on the way.
It's in the system.
I don't think it's shipped quite yet, but it's in the system. They're doing their thing, and it'll be we'll get notifications, Zach, probably tomorrow that it's shipped. So, Edward, we appreciate you, man. That means the world to us.
Thank you.
He says, how do you think Drew Lock will do next year? Also, they need to hurry and sign Simmons. Don't worry so much about Simmons, Edward, because, again, there's no urgency per se there in terms of a deadline. You don't have to think of it like if he gets to free agency on March 18th, it's all over. The Broncos will tag him. If they don't have, between now and the 18th, if they don't have a framework for a long-term multi-year deal, they'll tag him, and then that gives them from March, essentially, Zach, open-ended through the whole season, but John Elway, the previous 4 times he has franchise tagged a player, has an extension in place and signed by August of the same year. So don't worry about Simmons. But what's your answer for Drew Lock, what you expect to see from him next year?
If all goes according to plan and Pat Shurmur is the right coaching move and Drew Lock progresses on schedule and the Broncos get him his wide receiver and get him some O-line protection, he can be in the year of Drew Lock. He can be up there with the year of Mahomes and the year of Lamar Jackson. He has that ceiling and that upside. He has that ability. Regardless, though, he's going to be a minimum 3,500 yards, 26 touchdowns. He's going to have a big season for Denver. And my hot take right now, if everything goes according to plan, all the stars align, they are going to have a top 10 offense in the NFL by total yards. And that is by the arm of Drew Lock. So I anticipate a really, really strong, I'm not going to say all pro, not going to say Pro Bowl sophomore campaign for Drew Lock, but a very solid season where he truly established himself as the quarterback for the next decade.
Amen to that. I think to break it down to some nitty-gritty, look at the statistics that Jay Cutler put up his one Pro Bowl year with the Broncos in 2008. The mid to high 20s in touchdowns. I think he gets over 3,800 yards passing as a 16-game starter. And it could result in some accolades. I think it will result in some wins, most importantly, for your Denver Broncos.
Right.
Discount Audio and Wheels jumps in on Super Chat with a $10 donation. Appreciate you, D-A-Dub. Bring back Wolf. Mike Purcell on the cheap for depth. Shelby Harris is gone. Let's look for a vet at a good deal. 2 vets on the line to bring along for our young guys to become pros. Gives us money to keep spending. I'm with you on that, DAW. Zach, I think it's about, get Wolf re-signed. Purcell's coming back on an RFA tender for, $3.2 million or whatever it is. So you've got your one defensive end starting spot locked down. Your worst case scenario nose tackle starter locked down. Go out and pay mid to lower level money to a Javon Hargrave, to even Leonard Williams is out there. Eric Trickle published a video today. You guys probably have seen it, in which he laid out 5 defensive linemen. Leonard Williams, based on that year he had last year, kind of where he split it between the Jets and the Giants, he might not have as strong a market for his services than you would think as a former top 5 pick. So there are some options out there, and I don't disagree with DAW here, Zach, that it's about getting Wolf done. Harris is might as well write him off. He's going to go find that money and find 2 vets to bring in to help the young guys along.
I mean, games are won and lost in the trenches, Chad. We talk about offensive line being important, and it is, but defensive line is equally important, especially in Fangio's system. So I'm right there with you. Re-sign Derek Wolfe, bring in DJ Reader. You have Purcell coming back, and then use another draft pick later to supplement the defensive line as well. You have DeMarcus Walker. You have Draymond Jones. You have some nice pieces in place, but don't just stop at one or the other. They have the money, and they have, I think, the intention to sign DJ Reader and also Derek Wolfe in the same offseason.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
This is a fair point about Trent Williams hasn't played for a while, right? Because of the holdout and whatnot.
Yep.
But I'm looking at his game logs. Since he entered the league in 2010, he missed 3 games, 6. Mostly, though, he is a consistent starter. There's a few years he's been banged up. Maybe I can see a little bit more what you're saying the farther I get down on here, but I'm not that worried about availability with him. He's not like Juwan James in terms of the soft reputation, being injury prone. I'm not so much worried about that. To me, it's just a matter of what would it cost to get him here, and are you willing to give that up, and are you ready to turn the page and admit defeat on Garrett Bowles?
Yeah, I just think he's the type of guy, though, that if he would get traded to Denver, the first sign of him being hurt, he would make a big fuss about that, and it would blow up in the Broncos' faces. And you have to wonder, a year out of football, for a guy who's getting up there in age now, it takes a toll, and you have to get back into football shape. To give up a second-round pick, to pay that guy $12 million, maybe not even to start, that is just where I draw the line on Trent Williams.
All right, Mr. Boggins jumps in with a $10 donation on Super Chat. Love you, bro. He says, hey, all great as always. The song is almost done, which, by the way, we've heard it. I checked it out last night. Boggins emailed it to us. We checked it out, gave him some notes, gave him some feedback. Also, do you think the Broncos would have grabbed Trey Turner if they would have known they could have gotten for 2 rabbits in a pack of Big League Chew? Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, yes, absolutely. But that ship has sailed, right, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, that was a trade that I think the Chargers fleeced the Panthers on. Okung for Trey, the guard, who's a perennial Pro Bowl player. So I just think the Broncos, they probably would have called about him. They probably did call about him, but that was never a trade they were going to make. It was just, I don't think they were targeting that kind of player for that kind of trade.
Evan McKinley jumps in with a huge
thank you,
Super Chat, $50 donation. Evan, that's phenomenal. You have become one of the true superstars on Super Chat, so consistent in your support for the show.
Thank you so much, Evan.
Not just Huddle Up Pod, Zach. He's been supporting building the Broncos. He's been there for Dove Valley Deep Divers each and every week. So, Evan, you have our gratitude, man. That means the world to us.
Thank you.
He says, you guys are awesome. Watch every live that I can. At pick 14, if 4 offensive tackles, 4 quarterbacks, 3 wide receivers, Brown, Young, Okudah, and Simmons are all gone, who would your ideal pick be? Jefferson at this pick, would he be a reach? Would you trade back? The rest of the realistic free agent pickups. Love from Kentucky, from old Kentucky. All right, let me do that math in my head here. I'm trying to imagine what's all right. So the 4 offensive tackles. So Wills, Wirfs, Thomas, Becton gone. Quarterbacks are gone. We don't really care about that. Wide receivers are gone. I'm probably thinking Jeff Gladney from TCU, the corner, to be honest with you, at pick 15. And he had himself a really solid, good combine too. And the scheme fit for Fangio, Zach, would be phenomenal. That's one guy off the top of my head. I'd have to give that one a little bit more thought, Evan.
It depends who's on the board. I'm with you, Chad. I really can't visualize it. Maybe Javon Kinlaw, maybe Rager, the receiver. There's some options out there, but in that scenario where all their targets are gone, I prefer the Broncos if they could trade back, get another draft pick, and then still get your guy in the first round. But regardless of Derek Wolfe, regardless of Reader, if Kinlaw is there at 15, all those guys are gone. I'm thinking long and hard about taking him and just sitting him down and letting him learn.
All right, there was one that I was going to grab right here, and then the stream just shot down. Here it is. Wayne on Facebook. He says, NFL Network said that Flacco may redo his deal to be the backup. Thoughts? I haven't seen that. Maybe it was just a conversation where they were spitballing whether or not it could happen. I haven't seen any reports that anyone thinks it's likely or to expect it. But, Zach, let me explain to everyone my biggest concern with bringing Flacco back is, even if he takes backup quarterback money, let's say he's like, yeah, I'll take $6 to $8 million to be the backup. Well, the problem with that is just you don't want Locke to feel like in any way he's looking over his shoulder and that there's any kind of split in the messaging as far as what the team is telling the locker room, who's the man, who's the guy. I think Locke is probably a big enough boy and strong enough mental constitution, has enough confidence, has enough swagger that it probably wouldn't be a big deal. But I just don't think that that's something the Broncos are going to be willing or interested in rolling the dice on. And frankly, Zach, I don't think Flacco is going to be willing to accept a pay cut of that magnitude to stay in Denver. Maybe he would somewhere else and go, turn the page, new environment, new city. But it would be quite humiliating for a guy who views himself as a, former world champion quarterback and 10-year starter in the league, Baltimore Ravens all-time leading passer, to suddenly go from last year's day one starter to, incumbent, unquestioned backup.
Yeah, the understood franchise quarterback, right, Chad? That's what Flacco is at 34. Yeah, I wouldn't pay the guy $6,000 to be the backup. Not only, is he all for nothing physically, but it's just bad juju. It's a reminder of what the Broncos used to be, and that was the team that was welcoming these Band-Aid veteran retread quarterbacks. That's the old Broncos. The new Broncos are led by Drew Lock. They have a new way of thinking. They're a younger, exciting, more hip team, more explosive. You don't want Flacco to be in that environment. He literally admitted he has no interest in being a mentor for Drew Lock. I don't want that guy on my team. I don't care how cheap he is. I can go get anyone. I can go get Trevor Siemian. I can go sign literally anyone off the street. Brandon Allen, I'll make him the backup. I don't want Flacco in the building. It's just bad juju. It's bad vibes. It's a reminder of what the Broncos, the failed quarterback moves they made. I don't want him polluting Drew Lock by just his presence alone in the building. So even if he wants to restructure, I say kick rocks, hit the road.
Kick those rocks, dog. Kareem jumps in on Facebook saying, bring in the corner Logan Ryan to replace Harris Jr. He's been a consistent slot corner in coverage. Seems like an intriguing candidate for teams looking for help in the slot. Unfortunately, Logan Ryan just kind of had a down year last year for the Titans. If you could get him for the right price, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I'm not sure the value offset would be better than what you might be able to get with Amukamara, who can come in right out of the gates, hit the ground running in Fangio's scheme, and be a high-level, number 2 corner in this scheme. Bosby, Amukamara, and Callahan is your nickel.
Nailed it, Chad. Yeah, Amukamara, I think, would be cheaper than Logan Ryan, and he fits the scheme a lot better than Logan Ryan. So it's a no-brainer. If the Broncos want to sign a free agent cornerback to pair with Boye, I would go out and get Amukamara. I wouldn't waste my time on Logan Ryan or Ronald Darby. Just go get Amukamara. You can sign him right now. You don't have to wait. Get him for relatively cheap, then set your defense.
Anubis GOE on YouTube says, love the show. What you guys think about James Bradbury still being an option because Isaac Yiadom isn't the answer. Bradbury was a guy that I had interest in. For those of you who don't know who we're talking about, the Carolina Panthers free agent corner. However, Zach, the last thing I read on him is that he's looking for $15 million a year, at which point I'm saying later. Even before the Bosby trade, I'm saying later to that.
He's going to get 15 only because he's the third best corner in this class now behind Byron Jones and Chris Harris Jr., and that's just the way the market goes. He's going to get paid, and to be your number 3 guy, he's going to be way too expensive. So before the Boye trade, I can see it maybe being a possibility, but the Broncos were never, it seems like, going to go that high into the $15 million range, or else they would have just made a play to keep Chris Harris Jr. or Byron Jones. It's the whole reason they made that trade to begin with. So no on Bradbury.
Stu gave us our answer where he's been 2 trips to Chicago. We know he went to Chicago recently. Turns out twice. Thanks for the update, Stu. Antonio jumps in on Super Chat with a $15 donation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. He says, I'm trying to catch these episodes every chance I get. Glad I caught this one. Sad to see Bosby not returning, but I can trust Fangio to turn things around. # Broncos country. Antonio, for what it's worth, the Broncos are still interested in bringing Bosby back. They just didn't want to tender him, even at the right of first refusal level, because it would have paid him a little bit more than $2 million. And we're talking about a guy with 2 NFL starts under his belt. That's it. To suddenly pay him $2 million, and then also the fact he's coming off that significant injury. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that's the rationale. But they still want to bring him back. He's unfortunately, though, the risk they run by just not tagging him or tendering him, I should say, is he's going to get a chance to test the market, and there might be teams out there willing to sign him and swoop him away from the Broncos. So here's to hope. And I think there's still, Zach, if I were to put odds on it, I would say there's like a 60-40 chance Bosby still returns.
Right there with you. That was the figure in my mind as well. I mean, he knows the scheme. He knows he'd have probably an immediate path to playing time. Might not be a starter, but he'll definitely get some reps on the field. And I think he would rather take a chance there and knowing the system and knowing the team and knowing the city, he's not going to get much more on the open market. So why not come back to Denver on a 1 year, 2 year deal? I'll be all for it. Regardless, though, the Broncos have to make one more cornerback move between now and the draft. Whether that's a Mukamara, whether that's a trade for somebody else, or even if they wait until the draft, they are not done adding to this secondary just yet.
I was wondering the same thing, Cartoon. Where's Ryan been? Hope everything's chill on the home front for our great listener, member of the community. Let's see here what is on Ronnie's mind on Facebook. He says, what is left of Royce Freeman's contract? I had high hopes for him, but Lindsay took full advantage of his opportunity. So what will happen with Freeman? Well, Ronnie, he's under contract for 2020 and he's under contract for 2021. And even if, he's already peaked as a Bronco, he's at worst going to have a Devontae Booker type of trajectory where as a former third round pick, Broncos aren't about to cut him because he's not showing up drunk to training camp practices like Monte Ball was. It's not dereliction of duty. He just kind of slumped. He didn't take that step forward in year 2 that the team expected him to. And you're absolutely right, Ronnie. Lindsay usurped him, and he did so when they were both fresh rookies. One is a shiny, brand new third-round pick. The other's undrafted. Anyway, long story short, though, with regard to Freeman, he's going to be a Bronco for the next 2 years, Zach, barring something completely unforeseen.
Hey, the Broncos, I think, resigned themselves to think, knowing that Freeman is never going to be a workhorse. He's never going to be a starting caliber running back in the NFL, but he's a good backup to have. He's a plotter. He's an early down bowling ball. He's a between the tackles bruiser, and that has some value, especially when he's cheap and paired. He's the thunder to Lindsay's lightning, and that's why I'm saying you have Lindsay, you have Freeman under contract. You're going to draft a running back. Why bother with the Melvin Gordons of the world? Why even entertain those rumors? You have 2 guys who are under contract already for relative cheap. Add to it in the draft, and that's how you rebuild your running back room.
Glenn jumps in on Super Chat with a $20 donation. Thank you, Glenn.
It means a lot. Thank you.
He says, is there any player you would consider trading up to take in the first round? And if so, what's the most you would offer? So, Glenn, as you know by now probably, I'm not a huge fan of trading up in the first round. However, to answer your question and play that devil's advocate, there are a few guys that are in the covet level for me in the draft. That would include, Isaiah Simmons, Okudah.
Yep.
If you didn't have either one of Vaughn or Bradley Chubb, then I would say Chase Young would be up there, but that's not even an issue. So Okudah, Simmons, and depending on where they fell in the draft, like I'm not going to try and trade up into the top 5 to get a Henry Ruggs or a Tristan Wirfs, but Tristan Wirfs is a guy that I would covet. The compensation, though, that's where I get into a real tough kind of mental tug of war because, Zach, I hate the idea of giving up capital to move up because especially when it's going to take top 100 caliber picks, probably also next year's first round pick. And I know I got 5 picks in the top 100 this year, but, if it took, just to use a scenario, if you had Tristan Wirfs sitting there at pick 12 and you want to get in front of that next team or whatever, and you're at 15, I would give up, if you could, I would give up a third round pick to move up and grab him if it meant securing Tristan Wirfs. But beyond that, I'm just not a fan of trading up in the first round.
I'm a little more amenable to it. I would go in the top 10 for Simmons. He's the only guy in this draft that I would move from 15 to the top 8 or so for. And I had to give up a second round pick or a third round pick or a pair of futures picks. Beyond that, I would move up a few spots from 15 to, let's say, 12 or 13 for Henry Ruggs or Wirfs. But beyond that, there's a bunch of receivers on the board. There's a bunch of tackles on the board. Let one of those guys fall to you at 15. There's a better than good chance you're going to have a CeeDee Lamb or Judy or Ruggs fall into your lap anyway and not have to surrender a draft pick. But in this draft class, the Broncos don't need a quarterback. Simmons is the only guy I would even entertain going into the top 10 for, top 8 for. It's not going to happen regardless.
Honestly, Drake, this is a great question on YouTube. He says, what do you regret more, the Garrett Bowles, Shane Ray, or Bradley Roby? I'm guessing you're saying draft pick, right? Which one do you regret the most? And of those 3, Zach?
Bowles.
I mean, Shane Ray and Bradley Roby helped you win a Super Bowl. At least you can say that. Shane Ray was a rookie in 2015, the year they did win the Super Bowl, and he contributed, 4.5, 5 sacks, something like that, was a part of that pass rush rotation that just terrorized a trio of quarterbacks in the playoffs. But Shane Ray, Bradley Roby was basically a nickel starter for your team. Those guys helped you bring home a world championship. Garrett Bowles, to me, has the most regret at this stage, especially knowing you could have grabbed Ryan Ramczyk.
After franchise quarterback, franchise left tackle is the most important position in the NFL. And the Broncos badly whiffed, and he just named it, Chad, Ryan Ramczyk. That's the guy the Broncos should have drafted. They took a shot on a project, a raw, underdeveloped player, mentally immature player in Garrett Bowles. It didn't work out. You can get by with a Shane Ray kind of whiff who had 8 sacks in one season. You can get by in a Bradley Roby who was a decent starter. He had some injury problems, but Garrett Bowles with the penalties and the lapses, the sacks, the holds. I mean, that was just a first round disaster. Not much, better than Paxton Lynch the previous year.
Yep. You hate saying it, you hate hearing it, but sometimes the truth is painful. Terry jumps in on Super Chat up in Canada, proving as always that Broncos country is not a geographic location, but rather it is # a state of being. He says, awesome questions, awesome answers. The show is rocking as always. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that means the world to us, brother. Jeff jumps back in. Jeff Cohen on Super Chat. Thank you, Jeff. Do you guys think Elway will be on a major hot seat if he misses on the draft this year? I believe this season will tell our path for the future. I agree, Jeff. This is the opportunity, and he's got all the ammunition in the world to put the finishing touches on the rebuild. And hot seat, I don't know, man. We've gotten into the tinfoil hat kind of worst case scenario conspiracy. But until there's an ownership change, I think it's businesses. He's not just a GM. He's literally the top football executive. He is the president of football operations. So it would take a lot to get him out of there, and probably an owner coming in and saying, you're done.
He's pretty much the de facto owner right now, Chad, like you were saying, until an owner comes in. And he's out of excuses in the sense that he has a coaching staff in place. He has continuity. He has a franchise quarterback. He has money to spend this offseason, draft picks to spend. If the Broncos do all that and they stay healthy and they go, 5-11, 6-10, he will face intense scrutiny, but it's going to take a disaster of just epic proportions. I'm talking 1-15, 2-14 to even consider Ellis to think about firing him. It would just upend the entire Denver sports scene. You can't really do that to a legendary guy. He just has too much clout in the building. I'm not exonerating him by any means. He deserves the criticism that he's got and would get under that scenario, but it's just he's too ingrained in the fabric of the Broncos to be fired after one more season, I feel like.
Jonathan jumps in on Super Chat with a $15 donation. Appreciate you, Jonathan. He says, no question, just showing some love. Keep up the great content. Thanks, bro.
That means so much. Thank you so much.
James jumps back in with another donation. James, see, that's what we're saying. Of course, you're a Super Chat superstar. Consistent as all get out.
Yep.
He says, I really hope Locke versus Mahomes is the new Peyton versus Brady. Amen to that, Zach.
It will be, but it's Locke versus Mahomes, and that's what Broncos fans have to realize. This is the new age of quarterbacks now. The Peyton Mannings and the Tom Brady's, those strict pocket passers, that's over with now. You're talking dual threat quarterbacks of Mahomes and Drew Lock, and that's why it's going to be exciting. It's the new era of football, and the Broncos are privy to that by having their guy in place.
All right, Ron W. jumps in, speaking of Super Chat superstars, with a $5 donation. Appreciate you, Ron. He says, Judy, Ruggs, Lamb, Mims, Chenault, Rager, or Ayuk. In your opinion, who is the best fit for Shurmur's scheme? I don't know. You can really split hairs at the top of that list in terms of best fit, because I could see a utility and a fit for everybody. Everybody you just listed there, Ron, to be honest with you. So I have to devolve that question back to my favorite receiver in this class, which is CeeDee Lamb. Basically, it's like the difference between, and it just depends on your scheme. So I get what you're saying here, but if they were coming out the same year, who do you prefer, DeAndre Hopkins or Tyreek Hill? They're both killers. They're both going to do their thing. They're both going to gash the opposition. They're just going to do it in different ways. And in this scenario, maybe Lamb is his NFL comparison is Hopkins, and for Ruggs, his comparison is a little bit closer to Tyreek Hill. For me, though, I'm wanting more of that consistent game that a guy like Lamb can bring to the table. And Judy as well. Judy's up there for me. Probably goes Lamb. For me, it goes Lamb, Judy, Ruggs.
You can't go wrong, though, in this draft class, Chad. They're just such supremely talented receivers on the board. But look at the receivers that Shermer hoarded when he was with the Giants. Everyone from Golden Tate to Benny Fowler to Cody Latimer, that's possession guys, that's speed guys. So I think if you can run fast, you can catch the ball well, you have a pretty developed route tree, you will succeed in Shermer's system. But I think I'm a little higher on Ruggs than Chad is. I'm putting Ruggs, then I'm putting Lamb, then I'm putting Judy. But all those receivers, for the most part, they would fit seamlessly into this Broncos system and be day one contributors.
Black Knight 232 on YouTube. What's up, guys? Just about missed the show again. What's the word on the Trent Williams trade? And also, what's the craziest thing that has happened to you when you go to a live event? Oh, dude. I got a lot of stories, bro. Not all of them are Huddle Up Podcast family friendly. So we'll save the answer to that if for those of you, who end up in Vegas hanging out at our get together, we'll save it for that. But it's been I've had some cool experiences. And even in the football side, I mean, Zach and I, we've told you some stories from just last year when we were at the Combine, some interesting things that happened. But the most interesting ones probably are the ones that you don't talk about on a live broadcast that's going to go to thousands of people. Kareem jumps back in. Thoughts on signing Brashad Perryman? He dropped just one pass and 65 targets for the Bucs, and Jameis Winston had a passer rating of 94 when throwing his way. I've actually become a lot more amenable to the idea of Perryman, and I think you could get him on the relative cheap, and it would mitigate the need to go so hard at wide receiver early on in the draft.
I guess I can get on board with it. If there's one veteran, slot fast guy that I'd want on the open market, that would be Randall Cobb for me. But I would prefer the Broncos or Taylor Gabriel, but I prefer the Broncos ultimately wait until the draft and get that guy in round one and just have him learn and be the unquestioned number two. Don't waste any money that you can put towards signing Simmons or signing Derek Wolfe. Just get that guy in the draft.
Edward jumps back in.
Wow, Edward.
With another donation. We love you
so much.
You're going to have to let us know when you get your shirt and tweet us a selfie so we can share that out, give you some love. Appreciate you, bro. He says, DB for life. Denver Broncos for life. I hate the Chiefs. Family friendly, dog. Keep up the good work, guys. Thanks for everything. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Edward. Yes.
Appreciate you so much. All right, let's we're getting a little bit long. I've got to go to a thing for my daughter tonight. So let us get down here. I don't want to miss any of our great listeners who have jumped in and chipped in on Super Chat. So, Zach, I am going to grab this Mark Langley one. Okay. And while you grab this Mark Langley one, and then I'm going to pull something up on YouTube, make sure I'm not missing anything.
All right. Mark wants to know. Mark drops a $4.99 donation. Thank you, Mark. We definitely appreciate that as always. Chad, I agree with you about Star Wars. Disney sucks, and that's why I love Zach Perna. He's so damn honest. #Rugs it is. Thanks, guys. Have a good night. Thank you, Mark. You always make us laugh. You always make us smile. We definitely appreciate, interacting with you and dropping those comments.
Amen to that. Looks like actually we didn't miss anything. So, all right, we're good. We're good. Appreciate you, Mark. You are the man. All right, let's see what else we got here. G.I. Jers jumps in with a $2 donation on Super Chat. Appreciate it, GI. Says, how is the terminology for Shermer's offense? Well, unless you've played in the offense, you're not going to know the answer to that. They keep that kind of stuff pretty well buttoned down in the NFL. However, what I can tell you, GI Jers, is that it is a lot of the concepts are the same. There's some terminology and nomenclature that is going to match up to what like Drew Lock and the offensive guys knew from last year. Just in some cases, different words for the same play or the same concept or the same. So it's Vic Fangio's downplayed that whole thing for what it's worth. I think he almost downplayed it a little too much, but for the most part, the spirit of what Fangio said, that he thinks that too much gets made out of having to learn new, plays, new playbooks, A, and B, new verbiage and nomenclature. He thinks that more is made of that in the media than is actually a concern amongst actual NFL clubs.
Yeah, it's kind of a cliche because a majority of NFL playbooks, they share the same plays, the same concepts, they're just worded differently. So I'm sure the Broncos will keep some of the Scangarello aspects, some even of the Bill Musgrave aspects from a couple of seasons ago. It's all the same routes. It's only so much you can do on the field. A lot of 3-by-1 sets, though, meaning 3 wide receivers, 1 running back. He loves to pass the ball, loves to be explosive down the field. So terminology down the nitty-gritty doesn't matter so much. We just know that it's going to be a more open, downfield, vertical, north-south attack.
Justin Statler jumps in on YouTube. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, my friend, but thank you. $20
Thank you so
donation.
much.
That means the world to us, bro.
Thank you.
He says, first time catching the show live. By far my favorite duo on this channel. Your boy finally got off the night shift, so be prepared, guys. Loads of support and chat hype coming your way. The drought's over. 2020 Go Broncos. Arizona fan. There it is, man. As always, state of being, brother.
Thank you, Justin.
Appreciate you. Yep. All right, let's see what else we got here, guys. We got to wind it down a little bit. Josh Boynton jumps in with a $20 donation on Super Chat. Wow, thank you, Josh.
Means a lot. Thank you.
What you gonna do when the orange and blue run wild on you?
Brother.
We got a Buster Rhymes here. Josh, thanks, bro. Let's see here. What you gonna do? What you gonna do? All right. Papa Burgundy jumping in with a $5 donation on Super Chat. He says, Melvin Gordon better than Royce Freeman by a large margin. There are guys in the draft that I like, though, like McFarland. There are a few guys, and that's what I'm saying, like that report that came out from Kliss, I want to say toward the end of last week, so about a week ago, where he's saying the Broncos are going to be looking for a starter-type running back in free agency. I mean, to me, it's the most asinine thing, especially when it comes to running backs, tread on tires, that whole shebang. Go to the draft. If you need fresh wheels to put behind Philip Lindsay, or you're looking for a compliment, you're looking for a guy that can maybe do a few things Lindsay can't, do it from the draft. Don't go pay somebody and just tempt the football fates of busting out on a free agent running back trying to get paid on the open market.
Well, obviously, Gordon's better than Royce Freeman, but he's older, he's injury prone, he's going to be expensive, doesn't have that much tread on his tires left, and he's an older running back, and he's not better to me than Philip Lindsay. So I'd rather supplement that like Chad said, like we've been saying for 3 weeks now. Go get that running back in the draft. You don't need a starter. You don't need a running back one. You have that guy. That is Lindsay. Go get number 3 guy. Use a mid-round pick on him. Just supplement the running back room and not have to waste more money on a retread who's going to take carries away from your lone offensive game buster in Philip Lindsay.
John Silva on YouTube jumps in. He says, hey, guys, love the work you put into on the pods. Are the Broncos going to use any more draft capital to move up in the draft or use for trades? Hashtag state of being. We've talked about, I think, the draft side of it up to this point pretty well. And we touched on it a little bit yesterday on yesterday's pod, but I wouldn't be surprised. This isn't a bold prediction, but just based on what I'm hearing, I wouldn't be surprised if Elway were to make another trade. We talked about Trent Williams as a possibility tonight. That was the subject of tonight's show. Stephon Diggs is a possibility. Calais Campbell is a possibility. In terms of, again, not bold predictions, but things to keep an eye on out there, Zach.
Trevathan too. I mean, there's options out there for the Broncos, on that side of the ball, on both sides of the ball, offense and defense. I anticipate one more move coming to help the offensive line. I don't think it's going to be Trent Williams, but I think Elway has his eye on someone. He wants to shore up as much as he can now to go into the draft, taking purely and genuinely the best player available at number 15.
Martin on Periscope says, I'm a big fan of Patrick Queen, the LSU linebacker. What do you guys think? Bronco from Canada, hashtag. You got it right there, dude. Proven as always. It's a state of being. Thanks, my friend. And, we like him too. Hunter Wertana jumps in, $5 donation, one of our Super Chat superstars. He says, folding laundry like a savage and listening to you guys. What a time to be alive. Go Broncos and keep up the great work. Hashtag orange hat. Hey, dude, worst case scenario, if we're not able to find an orange hat to put to slap one of our logos on in the fulfillment service that we're using in the merch store, worst case scenario, Hunter, I'll send you this hat. Okay, worst case scenario. You've been so consistent, and we appreciate you. All right, running out of time here, guys. So I'm gonna move this one along a little bit because I don't want to miss anybody. We don't do that. So let me hustle up here. TG in the house, jumping in. $20 donation. Appreciate you, TG. It's good to see you, bro. Sacks. He only allowed 4 sacks. The holding I will give you. Talking about Garrett Bowles, of course. Zach, your thoughts?
It's not that he just has 4 sacks. It's not that he just holds people or commits penalties. He does it at the worst possible time. Always when the Broncos are making a big play or scoring a touchdown, he takes them off the scoreboard. He puts them back and backs them up. And it seems like in the past, the Broncos could never overcome one Garrett Bowles penalty. Maybe with Drew Lock, they can overcome that and it won't be as much of a a factor in the Broncos offense. But he for a first round pick, number 20 overall, your franchise left tackle, we shouldn't settle for mediocrity. We shouldn't settle for the fact that he only allows 4 sacks. It's still a lot. It's still 4 more than you want from that franchise left tackle. That's just my opinion on Bowles. I'm not ready to exonerate him because he was a little better than being awful. Doesn't cut it for me.
But that's the perspective it seems like, TG, the Broncos have kind of taken with regard to Bowles is, they're taking the good with the bad. They recognize the holding is bad, but they also recognize, especially some of the advanced analytics, and it came out in the wash this way, especially post bye week, week, whatever that was, week 10, that he really turned the corner. And I think that's what they're trying to hang their hat on, thinking that Mike Munchak is the difference. We're not saying that that's the case. We're just telling you the way it seems right now. Now, Ryan says, I think my next year, maybe we can break the top 20 for the podcast in the U.S. of sports. Hey, dude, it's always good to have goals. And if we continue to grow the way we have with our great listeners, there's no telling how far this thing can go. Right now, the last I looked, we were number, and it's kind of a weird thing to flex. But if you're a top 100 podcast on football on iTunes, I'm going to flex, dude. And that's what we are. We're number 74th when I looked earlier this week and climbing many spots. Like this show has significant momentum. So we'll see how much farther, Ryan, with our great support from listeners and community like you, how close we can break into that top 20. Royal Dungiva. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, brother. He says, jumps in with a $5 donation on Super Chat.
Appreciate it.
You are the man. What's the best free agent haul and draft haul that's realistic to happen? Well, that's a long answer, but I would say realistic. All right. Realistic. I would say you got to have one more cornerback addition, Prince of Mukamara. That's what I'm saying. Realistic. All right. Derek Wolfe, Javon Hargrave. Now you've got your defensive line, and I'm going to also throw in DJ Reader. All right. Now you've really got your defensive line. And then I'm going to make a trade. I'm going to give my second round pick this year to the Broncos, and I'm going to grab Trent Williams, and I'm turning the page on Garrett Bowles, and I'm moving on. Hopefully the Redskins take that as compensation, but now I've got a set and forget left tackle, and I'm not limited scheme wise. I can rush off the left side. Outside zone is now, it's on the table again. I don't have to worry about holds left and right. So I think the only thing you're missing there on the free agent side is maybe, and this goes without saying, Justin Simmons gets franchise tag, but maybe adding an off-ball linebacker. But we'll see what's there. I'm looking at the second and third wave for off-ball linebackers, Zach.
I'm trying to keep it realistic, but I'm saying Mukamara, you sign him, you re-sign Derek Wolfe because Shelby Harris looking like a goner. You bring in DJ Reader, that you have your defensive line set, like Chad said. I'm going to deviate a little bit and say sign Jason Peters, save the draft pick, get yourself a tackle, sign Corey Littleton too. You have the money. It's not unrealistic. It's not implausible. He's not going to reset the market. He's going to get a pretty penny, but you can still sign him. The Broncos have the capital. You bring all those players in. The defense is set. Then in the draft, best case scenario, realistically, Henry Ruggs at 15 or CeeDee Lamb at 15, get your receiver, then go on from there.
And also, the one thing I didn't add, which I will, is if there is a little money left over, obviously you got to save money for the draft class, and you got to save a little OSHIT money for if anybody goes down in training camp. But Rashad Perriman, that was brought up by Kareem, and also Randall Cobb, if I can get them on the relative, on a deal that makes sense, not necessarily team friendly, but second to third wave caliber wide receiver contract, that's something I'm trying to get done as well. Joseph jumps in on Super Chat with a $5 donation. Thank you, Joseph. He says, what are the chances we have 2 or more 1,000-yard receivers in 2020? That's a good question, because we don't know who the number 2 is going to be yet, right? I think there's a solid chance in this system that Noah Fant can push close to that, but I think even putting him at 1,000 yards would be a bridge too far. So let's table that one, Joseph, till at least after the draft, and then we'll answer that question more realistically. It's still a crystal ball type of question, but we got to know who that number 2 is first, Zach.
I think Sutton's a lock, though, for 1,000 yards. He's going to be an all-pro as far as I'm concerned next year on his own volition, so he'll have a huge 1,300, 1,400-yard season. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, they take Henry Ruggs at 15. That's your wide receiver, too. I don't see him breaking 1,000 yards out of the gate. I think Noah Fant will be the biggest benefactor behind Courtland Sutton and also Phillip Lindsay, but he would have probably 700-800 yards, 6 to 8 touchdowns. He is going to contribute, or whoever the Broncos draft at 15, if they go that route. That receiver, too, in this offense with Shermer and Locke will see time and will catch a lot of passes.
Okay, guys, rapid fire. Bronco Batman jumps in on Super Chat. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
With a $5 donation. Says, love the show, guys. So excited about this offseason. It is an exciting time. It really is. Jonathan jumps in, Super Chat again, $5 donation. Means the world to us. Thanks, Jonathan. All right, let's see. I don't want to miss anybody here, but I do got to get going. Man, you guys have been so awesome tonight. Such a good conversation. Tyler jumps in, $5 donation on Super Chat. Don't see us spending a second in an old tackle. Either draft one or get a younger one with the same value with a longer future. Southern Ohio, hashtag state of being, baby. You know, I do understand it. You know, you want something more long-term, but, I mean, time frame-wise, Peyton Manning was only here 4 years. Look what you accomplished. Like, if you have the right guy that can really raise the tide, so to speak, and allow you to do things with your offense that, frankly, a rookie is unlikely to be able to do out of the gates anyway, you know, I think it might be worth the risk. But I do understand, Zach, that mentality for sure.
I do as well. And when you think about how Elway has been burned by bringing in veteran tackles who've been nothing but injury prone and been just disastrous waste of their contracts. So he might go to the draft to restock that cupboard with guard, center, tackle. But I'm with you. I wouldn't invest a second round pick in Trent Williams either. Third rounder, I'm thinking about second. I don't know.
Royal jumps back in and wants to know, thank you for the donation again, Royal, who is your dark horse pick at 15? I'm going to go back to Gladney, Jeff Gladney. Like, it's not a sexy name, a guy named Jeff Gladney, but he's a really good player and an under-the-radar first-round caliber corner that a lot of people aren't talking about, that it wouldn't surprise me to see the Broncos pick him, even with if there's a few other guys that are more known in the eyes and minds of Broncos fans are on the board. Like, it wouldn't surprise me to see them just grab Jeff Gladney.
Yeah, that's a really good choice there. I mean, a lot of the Broncos players that they're targeting, they wouldn't be dark horse because they're all interested and they all can fit a need. I'm going to say Kinlaw, though. I'm going to say Becton as well. He might not last to 15, but if Wirfs is off the board, if Thomas is off the board, he's on the board, that could be the pick there if they don't get a Trent Williams type in free agency.
Randall Cobb, our Super Chat superstar for tonight. Edward Keating wants to know, again, thanks, Edward. That's so awesome, bro. How much would it cost to get Cobb? Help me convince my wife to move to Denver. Denver is a great place. But, Zach, what's your answer on Cobb?
Well, he signed last year for, I believe it was 3.5. It was something very low level like that. And he had a pretty resurgent year in Dallas as the number 3 guy behind Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. I think you can get him for about 5 or 6 and low guarantees, a 1-2 year deal. He still has a ton of gas left in the tank. He can contribute on special teams as well. Good slot guy. Wouldn't preclude the Broncos from drafting Ruggs at 15 or Lamb at 15. He's the only veteran receiver on the open market I'd want the Broncos to go after.
TG jumps back in on Super Chat. Appreciate you, TG.
Thank you.
By the way, did you ever reach out to us? Did he ever reach out to us at milehighhuddle@gmail.com?
Don't know. Let us know, though.
Did, dude. If not, I'll check my notes. But if not, dude, please do. Let's get you a hat coming. Let's get you a hoodie, something. And maybe we already have done that because there's been a lot of that this last couple of weeks, especially. But if not, hit us up, TG. He says, I love Kenneth Murray, LB, and Jeremy Chin, the strong safety. Yeah, Chin, isn't he the nephew of Steve Atwater? Am I thinking of the right guy? I'll have to double check on that. But I like both those guys as well. It's just a matter of Chin's probably going to be more of like a early day three pick. I'm not sure where Murray's going to end up falling in this draft, but I like him too, TG.
I like Chin a lot as a Will Parks replacement at strong safety. If they can get him in day 3, like you said, Chad, I'm all for that.
Joseph jumps back in with a donation on Super Chat, showing some love. Thank you so much.
Wow.
That means the world to us, bro. All right, let me make sure. Oh, one more here, guys, and then we got to get out of here for tonight. Wardy Eagle jumps in on Super Chat with a $5 donation.
Thank you.
He says, assuming we get Ruggs at 15 and possibly another wide receiver in the draft, what happens to Tim Patrick and Deshaun Hamilton? Patrick, his prospects are probably a little bit more on shaky ground because he's not a draft pick, but they basically just become depth guys. They would both, like, let's say you add Ruggs at 15, they're both still projected to make this roster depending on what you did in free agency and depending on what else you might do in the draft. But Tim Patrick and Hamilton, I think this is the last year both can still pretty much be considered shoe-ins, virtual locks to make the 53, Zach.
Yeah, and both are players from the previous regime, and Hamilton was a Vance Joseph pick. That was not a pick that Vic Fangio had a say in or Pat Shurmur had a say in. So these guys, whoever they draft, are going to be their guys, whether that's a Ruggs or whoever else in the draft this year. And like Chad just said, they're going to have one more chance this season to be the number 4, number 5 guys, make an impact on offense. It may even come down, though, to Tim Patrick versus Deshaun Hamilton in training camp. That might be a guy they might trade later on, Deshaun Hamilton, even though he was a 4th-round pick. But there might not be enough room to go around for everyone, Chad. It's going to be interesting. Competition should make everyone better in the wide receiver core.
Very cool. Yep. Then we're definitely pulling for Chin. That's very cool. All right, guys, that's got to do it for today's episode of the Huddle Up Podcast. As always, thank you so much to each and every one of you for joining us live. All of you on Facebook, everyone on YouTube, everyone on Periscope, hanging out with us, contributing to the conversation in the stream, contributing to the community. It means the world to us, seriously. And our Super Chat superstars, I mean, we are blown away. Each and every day we turn on the stream and get on Talk Broncos football. You guys show us the love, and it just motivates us and makes us excited to get up the next day and attack it once again. So thanks to everybody. What a great conversation tonight, Zach. The mailbag, once again, does not let us down.
And it just flies, Chad. It's like almost an hour and 10 minutes. I'm looking at the timer, and it feels like we've been on here for 15 minutes. So talk football with Broncos fans and our listeners and our followers and our supporters. We talk off camera, Chad and I, and we're just so humbled, not only by the donations and all the super chat stuff, even before all that, we're just the level of commitment you guys show us and level of interaction and questions you bring to us. We love doing it. It literally inspires and motivates us. And this show would not be anything without your guys' support. So we thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Based on the football rankings, there is no other Broncos podcast higher in the rankings and Apple Podcasts than the Huddle Up Podcast. And that's thanks to you guys. So as always, we love you. Make sure, a couple quick matters of business, then we'll talk about where we go from here. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter, guys, at Huddle Up Pod. Don't forget also, while you're at it, to follow at Mile High Huddle. And don't miss out on the chance to follow my partner here, Zack Kelberman, at Kelberman NFL, myself at Chad and Jensen. And I'm going to put the link in the comment stream here, guys, for the TG jumping back in. Goodness gracious, bro. Man,
TG.
Make sure you hit us up, dude. I want to get you some swag on, brother.
Wow.
I'm putting a link in the comment stream. Thanks, TG. Holy cow, dude.
Literally proving what I said. That is pure, unadulterated reaction by Chad. I mean, what is there to say? TG, you are the man. You are the superstar. You are the Hall of Famer. I know it's just cliche and platitudes, and it's a lot for you to drop, but we definitely appreciate it. It's completely humbling.
Right as we're hopping off, too, dude. Like it's so humbling. It really is so humbling, and hopefully, TG, we get a chance to meet you. And
let us buy you.
You can make it down to the draft. I don't know where you're at, but if you can make it down to the draft, it'd be fun to hang out with you a little bit and talk some football and share some laughs. So hopefully, you can make it. And as we get a little bit closer to the draft, we'll lay out the details. And any of you who want to show up, by all means, we want you to come hang out with us. But TG, my goodness, that's twice you've done that, dude. Just in the last couple of weeks, man. You're on the show's Mount Rushmore as well.
Incredible. Yeah. He lives in Utah, apparently, Chad. So if you can make the drive out to Vegas, you can actually road trip with Chad. That'd be pretty fun.
Guys, we got to get out. I really do got to get out of here, though, guys. Tomorrow night, there is going to be a Friday nights until the draft, at least. We'll see how long it goes after that. Dove Valley Deep Divers that are going to go Friday at 5:30 Mountain, 7:30 Eastern, and then also on Saturday, same time. So you're going to have 2 pods to look forward to in the next 2 days, and then Zach and I will return, get back in the saddle Sunday, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. Until then, Zach, have a great weekend, bro.
You as well, Chad. Hope everything goes well with your daughter tonight.
Thank you. And guys, thanks for making another fun, exciting, great week for the Huddle Up Podcast. We love you. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you on Sunday.
You've been listening to the Huddle Up Podcast. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.